In March 2025, Amazon sent an update to millions of Echo devices. The notification, buried in a support document, said, "We are removing the Do Not Send Voice Recordings option." For years, a subset of Echo users had specifically enabled a feature that allowed their devices to process voice commands locally, keeping the audio on the device and sending only text to Amazon's cloud. They had made a deliberate privacy choice. They'd turned on a privacy-respecting setting. And Amazon turned it off. Not for some users, for everyone. The company decided unilaterally that the local processing was no longer an option. Every interaction with an Alexa device now routes to Amazon's cloud servers by default. No opt-out, no appeal, no choice. The funny part is that most users never even knew that this feature existed. The ones who did had read the fine print of the support document to find out it was gone. Either way, the result is the same. The device still sits in your kitchen, it still listens, and now everything it hears belongs to Amazon first. You bought the device, you installed it, you put it in your bedroom or your living room or the room where you have conversations that you consider private and intimate. And in March 2025, without asking, Amazon reconfigured it into a full surveillance node on their infrastructure. Today, we're talking about the surveillance network that most people have voluntarily installed into their homes. I am Alan Pace, and this is the OPSEC podcast. Let's start with what the smart home actually is. Here is an accurate technical description of a smart home device: an internet-connected sensor installed in your most private spaces, operated by a company whose business model depends on the data that it collects and produces. The marketing language is convenience, automation, smart living. The operational reality is a network of always-on listening and watching devices that you own but don't control, connected to servers you don't operate, subject to policies that you don't write and many times don't vote for, are accessible to entities that you didn't approve or accept. This episode is not about whether these devices are useful. They are. It's about understanding what you're operating and what goes on inside of them when you use them, and making deliberate decisions about what that means for your privacy posture. First, let's focus on Alexa and Echo. The way Alexa works is the device listens continuously for a wake word. When it hears one, it records what follows, transmits it to Amazon's cloud, processes the request, and returns a response. The microphone is always active. That's not a design flaw. It's simply how the product works. In March 2025, Amazon removed the option that allowed local audio processing on Echo devices. Every voice interaction now routes to Amazon's cloud by default. Amazon retains these recordings, voice audio, text transcripts, and typed requests until you manually delete them or until a retention period you've set expires. The default retention is indefinite. There is a Do Not Save Recordings option, which automatically deletes recordings after processing. However, it requires you to know it exists in the first place and know where to find it in order to actively enable it. The default is retention. The legal exposure these recordings are subject to are stored on Amazon's commercial servers. They are subject to the same legal processes, subpoenas, national security letters, emergency disclosure requests that we've covered in other episodes, and that reaches all U.S. tech company infrastructure. Law enforcement has also been able to obtain Alexa recordings in criminal cases. Amazon complies with all government and law enforcement requests. Third-party Alexa skills, such as the apps built by external developers, operate under separate data retention policies that Amazon has no control over. A skill you enable may be retaining data according to its own terms and not Amazon's. Therefore, In order to know that, you have to go through the same lengthy process of figuring out what that means, because it is separate from Amazon's privacy and retention policies. Next, let's look at the Ring doorbell, also what I like to call the neighborhood surveillance grid. Ring cameras are not just home security devices. They are nodes in a surveillance network that covers millions of American homes and neighborhoods. And the footage they capture is accessible to law enforcement through mechanisms most users never agree to. Ring's partnership history with law enforcement is very well documented. In April of 2025, Ring announced a partnership with Axon, the company that makes police body cameras, allowing law enforcement to request Ring footage through Axon's digital evidence management platform. Requests route through the system. Users can consent or decline. However, the infrastructure for government access is built in. Prior to this, Ring had partnered with Flock Safety, which operates a nationwide network of license plate readers and surveillance cameras with data widely shared among police departments. Ring canceled that partnership in February of 2026, citing a comprehensive review, but the fact that the partnership existed and operated for months is the main point here. Ring's terms allow emergency disclosure. If Amazon reasonably believes that the sharing footage is necessary to protect someone from imminent harm, they can share it without a warrant and without notifying you. The definition of reasonable belief is solely up to Amazon, is completely subjective. Additionally, there is another dimension to these Ring devices that most people, I think, either miss entirely or simply just don't realize or understand. And that is that your neighbor's Ring camera, for example, based on whatever section of your property that it has captured in the background, it has the ability to capture your comings and goings, your car, your license plate, your guests, your patterns. You've never agreed to be filmed. You never consented to your movements being stored in Amazon's infrastructure. But if you park on the street lined with other Ring doorbells, you're in the network whether you like it or not. Next, let's talk about smart TVs. Automatic content recognition, also known as ACR, is a technology embedded in most major smart TVs that identifies what you're watching, second by second, and then reports it back. Not just streaming content, broadcast television, cable, gaming, anything displayed on the screen. SambaTV supplies ACR infrastructure to Sony, Toshiba, Panasonic, and many other primary well-known manufacturers. Their technology is embedded in more than 40 million devices globally. Samsung and LG have their own ACR implementations. Now, you might be asking, why does this matter? Well, the primary focus of how important this is can be taken from the example of Vizio, when they became notable from reporting that Vizio had made more money selling viewer data than from selling the televisions themselves, which proves that the data is the product, not the product itself. What's collected by ACR systems includes every single show, every single channel, every film, every game, timestamps, stored and sold. The data goes to advertisers and into an ad network, including political campaigns, hedge funds, data brokers, you name it. Your viewing history over years maps your interests, your health concerns, your political developments, political stances, your emotional patterns, as well as your daily schedule. ACR is enabled by default on virtually every single major smart TV brand. The disclosure is buried in the initial setup wizard, the screen that most people skip through. And the option to disable it exists. However, most people never know about it or know how to find it. Okay, moving on to Amazon Sidewalk, which is one of my favorite topics because it is next level scumbaggery and intelligence collection that is even more than the obvious ones that we've already talked about. Amazon Sidewalk is a low-bandwidth mesh network that uses your Echo and Ring devices as bridges, extending network connectivity to Amazon's ecosystem of devices in your neighborhood, including devices owned by people you've never met. Sidewalk is enabled by default on compatible Amazon devices when it launched. If you didn't specifically go into your settings and turn it off, your device became part of the Sidewalk network. This means that they are utilizing, without request, your home internet connection and your hardware to contribute to a coverage grid. It's been reported that as of 2025, Sidewalk covers approximately 95% of the United States. Amazon describes this as a feature, of course. The ACLU describes this as a surveillance infrastructure expansion that users were opted into without meaningful consent. This might be one of the few things that I agree with the ACLU on. So what are the privacy implications? Sidewalk extends the attack surface of your home network without your authorization. Devices that you don't control connect through your infrastructure. Security researchers have raised concerns about the potential for networks to be used for location tracking. Sidewalk's Find Your Device function can, in principle, disclose the location of participating devices to broader networks or unauthorized users. And to even sweeten the deal in a more obvious and disrespectful way, the 2025 Echo Show models removed the physical camera shutter that allows users to physically block the 13-megapixel camera. That choice of removing a hardware privacy control was made by Amazon, not you. And this behavior shows what they care about, what their priorities are. They care about the collection of data. They care not about their customers. They simply want you to use their cheap products and hand over your data to them without question. Moving on, let's cover Google Nest and how disabled does not mean off. In February of 2026, during the investigation of a kidnapping case, FBI agents recovered footage from a Google Nest camera that investigators believed was no longer active. The footage was retrieved from Google's back-end system, cloud storage that had retained video after the camera had appeared to be offline. This case highlights two things. First, Google Nest cameras retain footage in the cloud on a continuing basis, and that footage may persist in background systems far beyond what the user interface leads you to believe. And second, law enforcement can reach that footage through legal processes, regardless of whether the user believes the device is operational. Google Nest's transparency report shows consistent law enforcement data requests complied with when legally required. Beyond formal legal process, Google's terms of service allow emergency disclosure without a warrant when Google believes there is an imminent risk to life. Nest devices like cameras, doorbells, thermostats, etc., build a behavioral profile of when you are home, your daily patterns, and your household activity. The thermostat knows your schedule. The doorbell maps your comings and goings. The camera records the interior of your home. All of this lives on Google's infrastructure. All of it is reachable. None of it is controlled by you. So what can you actually do? Well, for Alexa, you can enable Don't Save Your Recordings. In the Alexa app, set automatic deletion for 3 months at most. Delete your voice history periodically. Do not place Echo devices in bedrooms, home offices, or anywhere sensitive conversations happen. If the conversation matters, the Echo should not be in the room. For Ring devices, you can go into your control center and find the law enforcement settings and review what is enabled. Disable police footage request notifications if you choose not to participate. If you want a doorbell camera that requires a warrant before handing over your footage, Arlo, Apple, Wyze, and Eufy all have documented policies requiring legal process that is much more strict. That's a product decision worth making deliberately, in my opinion. For smart TVs, every major brand, Samsung, LG, Vizio, Sony, they all have an ACR disable option buried in the settings. Find it and disable it. Now, of course, they don't make it easy. It's buried in the settings menu, and all of them call it something different. For example, Samsung calls it Viewing Information Services. LG refers to it as Live Plus. Vizio calls it Smart Interactivity. And on Sony's or SambaTVs, it's called Interactive TV. Whatever TV you have, whatever device you have that has the ACR embedded into it, find it and turn it off. This takes 10 minutes and eliminates one of the most persistent silent data collection mechanisms in your home. For Amazon Sidewalk, open the Alexa app and go to Account Settings and Amazon Sidewalk, toggle it off. Your devices stop serving as bridge devices for that broader network. For Google Nest, you will want to go and audit what's being stored in Google Home. You will want to enable two-factor verification on your Google account. Understand the deleted footage may not be immediately removed from the back-end systems. For the highest sensitivity environments, use a camera brand whose data practices you've explicitly reviewed. That pretty much covers what you can do with the individual device settings. I believe that it is worth it. However, it is a band-aid over a sucking chest wound. I believe that the real protection comes from home network hardening, and that is the device level mitigations above that I had mentioned. They are important, but the network layer is where you add a second line of defense, and it's where most people do nothing at all. I've talked about this in previous episodes when I discussed the subject of home network hardening. Most people have a router from their ISP and it is running at default setting. However, the guy came and set it up. This is a major vulnerability. So this is a little bit more technical of a response, but it pays in dividends when it comes to privacy stance. So the first recommendation is to segment all of your IoT devices onto a separate network. Every smart home device, Echo, Ring, smart TV, thermostats, cameras, whatever, should live on a network that is isolated from your computers, mobile devices, or storage devices. The easy path is a dedicated guest network for IoT devices only. The proper path is a separate VLAN with firewall rules that allow IoT devices to reach the internet but prevent them from communicating with the rest of the network. The practical benefit of this is if an Echo or a smart TV is compromised, the attacker has access to the IoT segment only and not your laptop, home computer, network storage device, or any mobile devices connected to your home network system. Now, the caveat is just like all other more technical responses, you can break shit. So the full segmentation can break some smart home integrations. Chromecast, Sonos, HomeKit, and Matter all rely on MDNS for device discovery, which doesn't cross VLANs without additional configuration. It's a trade-off to evaluate before you commit to full isolation. But if you want to go this more technical route, then it is worth learning about and finding out if this is the right path for you. The next option is one of my favorite topics, which I will be doing a full episode on the importance of this that I think a lot of people miss, which is DNS level blocking. So services such as NextDNS or Pi-hole, they configure your router, or they configured on your router rather, to block known ad tech, tracking, and data broker domains across every single device on your network. So you are configuring your network to block these and not relying on doing it with every single device, because the blocking happens on the network level that every device is connected to without touching any per device settings. This is especially useful for smart TVs where ACR can't be fully disabled through the settings, and for any devices that call home to infrastructure that you can't audit. Set your home router's DNS to NextDNS and configure a block list. Now, this does require you to have a NextDNS account. It is extremely cheap. I am not certain at the moment if they have a free tier, but it is extremely cheap and extremely easy, and it is worth looking into. So I highly recommend secure DNS services as a protective layer on your home network. It takes about 15 minutes to set up and configure, and it covers your entire network, and then you're done with it. So go check it out. Now, another level of protection is a hardware level, which is an additional hardware device on your network called Firewalla. If a full router swap or VLAN configuration is more than you want to take on the technical side, Firewalla is a dedicated network security device that just plugs in between your modem and your router. It provides per-device traffic monitoring, DNS level blocking, intrusion detection, and IoT segmentation through its mobile app without requiring you to replace your existing router or configure VLANs manually. It's a practical middle path for anyone who wants network layer defense without taking a deep dive into learning the networking side of things. A couple more things worth saying directly. If your home router is running the default password and default security settings, and that's nothing you've ever changed in the past, you're sitting at a high vulnerability state, and that requires immediate correction. So go do that. Another thing, if your router is an Amazon Arrow, then you have installed a surveillance company's networking hardware to carry the traffic from a surveillance company's smart speaker. So you have essentially installed the surveillance company's middleman device in between. So it's even more wide open. And that's a concentrated single point of failure in your home network. It may be worth thinking about whether that's the right infrastructure choice. The broader principle here is that every device in your home that connects to the internet is a potential surveillance node operated by somebody else. The network layer determines what those nodes can reach and what can reach them. So treat your home network like the perimeter. The Amazon March 2025 decision to remove local processing wasn't malicious. It wasn't a hack. It was a product decision by a company that determined that the operational cost of maintaining a privacy option wasn't worth the benefit, so they removed it. That is how it works. The surveillance infrastructure in your home wasn't installed against you. You installed it. The companies that made it simply decided over time what the default settings would be, which controls you would have access to, and which ones they'd eventually remove. You bought the devices, they built the network, and now your home is a node in that surveillance infrastructure. The good news is most of what is covered here today has a mitigation. ACR can be disabled, Sidewalk can be turned off, recording retention can be shortened, camera brands that require warrants exist and work just as well. The surveillance is on by default. Privacy requires you to turn it off. Thank you for listening to the OPSEC podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on socials. All of our links can be found on our website at opsecpodcast.com. I am Alan Pace, and remember, your privacy and your security is your responsibility.